almost 400,000 people have either been killed or disappeared. So definitely the violence is rampant. We're seeing clashes pretty frequently.
Welcome back. In our continuing coverage of the ongoing drug war in Mexico, we turn our attention to an intriguing aspect of cartel operations. Despite being fierce rivals, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJN, and the Sinaloa Cartel are known to share suppliers for synthetic drug precursors. Here's an in-depth look at how this unusual cooperation plays out. Both the CJNG and the Sinaloa Cartel rely heavily on precursor chemicals to manufacture synthetic drugs like fentanyl and methamphetamine. These essential chemicals are often sourced from international suppliers, particularly in China and India. Given the limited number of suppliers who can discreetly fulfill large orders, both cartels frequently use the same sources. The global nature of these supply networks means economies of scale come into play. Large, consistent orders from these suppliers reduce costs and help evade suspicion from regulatory authorities, maintaining a steady flow of necessary chemicals. Sharing suppliers can also spread the risk. If one supplier is compromised by law enforcement, the disruption impacts both cartels. This incentivizes them to maintain a level of cooperation or a non-interference policy in these critical areas. Investigations have revealed that legitimate businesses in both Mexico and the US are used to acquire and distribute these precursor chemicals. Figures like Francisco Pulido Corachero have been implicated in using legitimate companies to mask the acquisition and distribution of these chemicals. In a recent statement, U.S. Attorney General Merrick B. Garland emphasized the importance of these precursor chemicals to the CJNG's operations and the collaborative efforts between U.S. and Mexican authorities to bring Pulido Corachero to justice. Despite their rivalry, the necessity to secure a steady supply of essential chemicals fosters a level of cooperation between the CJNG and the Sinaloa Cartel. This pragmatic approach ensures the continued flow of materials necessary for their drug manufacturing and distribution enterprises. So, do you know how rival cartels like the CJNG and the Sinaloa Cartel end up sharing suppliers for synthetic drug precursors? Both the CJNG and the Sinaloa Cartel require large quantities of precursor chemicals, which are essential for producing synthetic drugs like fentanyl and methamphetamine. These chemicals are often sourced from a limited number of suppliers in countries like China and India. Due to the high demand and the need for discretion, these cartels often end up using the same suppliers. The suppliers benefit from large, consistent orders, which help them avoid suspicion from authorities. For the cartels, this means reduced costs and a reliable supply of the necessary chemicals. Logistical channels and routes, including ports, warehouses, and transportation networks, often overlap due to their strategic importance. Now let's see how this shared supply chain affects law enforcement efforts. It complicates them. When suppliers serve multiple cartels, law enforcement actions against one cartel can inadvertently disrupt the operations of another. The recent extradition of Francisco Pulido Corachero highlights how law enforcement agencies in the US and Mexico are working together to tackle this issue. Pulido Corachero's extradition is a significant step in disrupting these operations. He and his associates used legitimate businesses to acquire and distribute precursor chemicals, masking their illicit activities. This demonstrates the sophisticated strategies employed by these cartels to sustain their drug production and distribution. 3 legally constituted companies are currently under investigation for their role in supplying fentanyl precursors to these cartels. Operating under the guise of legitimate businesses, these companies are crucial nodes in the illegal drug manufacturing network. They import essential chemicals for producing synthetic drugs, which are then diverted to clandestine labs run by the cartels. The CJNG, led by Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, also known as El Mencho, is notorious for its violent tactics and significant control over drug trafficking routes. The cartel has a robust and highly organized structure, enabling it to effectively manage the production and distribution of large quantities of synthetic drugs like methamphetamine and fentanyl. Recent law enforcement efforts have resulted in notable arrests and extraditions that impact the CJNG's operations. These efforts have uncovered the involvement of legitimate businesses in both Mexico and the United States that supply chemical products necessary for drug manufacturing. Can you imagine the involvement of these legitimate businesses in the cartel's operations? These businesses often operate under the guise of legitimacy, importing chemicals that are essential for producing synthetic drugs. Once these chemicals enter the supply chain, they are diverted to clandestine labs run by the cartels. The complexity arises because these businesses appear to comply with regulations on the surface, making it difficult for authorities to distinguish between lawful commerce and activities that facilitate the drug trade. These investigations are crucial in understanding how the cartels maintain their drug manufacturing capabilities. The extradition of Francisco Pulido Corachero, a Mexican national alleged to have supplied precursor chemicals to the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CEJNG, marks a significant development in the fight against drug trafficking. Pulido Corachero was brought to Washington, D.C. to face trial, highlighting the extensive international cooperation required to combat these sophisticated criminal networks. Francisco Pulido Corachero, 66, was extradited from Mexico to the United States to face charges related to the supply of precursor chemicals for methamphetamine production. He appeared before U.S. Magistrate Judge Moxila A. Upadhyaya on May 13th. In March 2021, a grand jury in Washington, D.C. indicted Pulido Corachero and his co-conspirator, Carlos Algredo Vasquez, on charges of conspiring to manufacture and distribute methamphetamine and listed chemicals for importation into the United States. The indictment, which was unsealed in February 2023, included chemicals such as methylamine, nitroethane, phenylacetic acid, toluene, and acetone. Carlos Algredo Vasquez, 58, remains in custody in Mexico awaiting extradition. His brother, Javier Algredo Vasquez, 56, was convicted in July 2023 for his role in the same conspiracy and sentenced to 18 years and 8 months in prison on February 23, 2024. U.S. Attorney General Merrick B. Garland emphasized the importance of precursor chemicals to the CJNG's operations and highlighted the collaborative efforts between U.S. and Mexican authorities to bring Pulido Corachero to justice. Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General Nicole M. Argentieri also noted the decade-long conspiracy to distribute methamphetamine and precursor chemicals into the United States, reaffirming the commitment to dismantling drug trafficking supply chains. The DEA Los Angeles Field Division, with support from the U.S. Marshals Service's Investigative Operations Division and Homeland Security Investigations Houston, led the investigation. In 2023, synthetic drugs like methamphetamine and fentanyl caused almost all of the deadly drug poisonings in the United States, resulting in over 107,000 overdose deaths, as reported by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Don Puli's extradition marks a significant step in the U.S. government's efforts to disrupt the synthetic drug supply chain. This includes targeting chemical brokers in Mexico, as well as individual traffickers and the Chinese chemical manufacturers they purchase from. Two individuals, Gredo Vasquez and Pulido Corachero, have been accused of leading roles within the CJNG's extensive drug operations. These activities highlight the cartel's intricate logistics and operational sophistication aimed at sustaining their drug trafficking enterprise. Gredo Vasquez is purportedly a central figure in the CJNG, responsible for orchestrating the logistics and coordination necessary for the large-scale production of methamphetamine. Pulido Corachero, on the other hand, is implicated in the cartel's distribution network. His role involves organizing smuggling routes, ensuring secure transport of drugs, and managing relationships with other criminal entities involved in the drug trade. These individuals exemplify the CJNG's operational complexity, spanning from manufacturing methamphetamine to ensuring its efficient distribution across borders. Their alleged activities underscore the challenges faced by law enforcement agencies in combating organized crime networks like the CJNG. As investigations continue, the focus remains on disrupting these sophisticated operations to curb the flow of illicit drugs into the United States. The arrests and extraditions of these key figures disrupt the cartel's operations, but also demonstrate the resilience and adaptability of the CJNG. While these law enforcement actions are significant, the cartel's decentralized structure allows it to continue functioning even when leaders are removed. The involvement of legitimate businesses in supplying drug precursors indicates a broader issue of regulatory oversight and the need for international cooperation in combating the illegal drug trade. The ongoing investigations and law enforcement efforts against the CJNG and its associates highlight the complex interplay between legal and illegal activities in the drug trade. The cooperation between rival cartels in sharing suppliers, the involvement of legitimate businesses, and the roles of individuals like Greto Vasquez and Pulido Corachero show us the multifaceted nature of the challenge faced by authorities in dismantling these powerful criminal organizations.
Security and border experts say Mexican cartel violence is likely to increase in Mexico this year. Experts say that with the upcoming presidential election in Mexico, we may see cartels not getting their way.
The Cartel de Jalisco Nueva Generación, CJNG, is recognized as one of the most powerful and violent drug cartels operating in Mexico today. Founded in the early 2010s, the CJNG has rapidly expanded its influence and control, becoming notorious for its brutal enforcement tactics and extensive criminal operations. The cartel engages in a wide range of illegal activities, primarily drug trafficking, which includes the production, smuggling, and distribution of illicit drugs such as methamphetamine, cocaine, and heroin. Additionally, the CJNG is heavily involved in extortion, kidnapping, money laundering, and arms trafficking. The narco activities of CJNG involve extensive drug trafficking and extortion. The cartel's operations are marked by extreme violence. They frequently engage in violent confrontations with rival gangs as they seek to expand their territory and eliminate competition. Their clashes with law enforcement are equally vicious, often involving ambushes, assassinations, and attacks using high-powered firearms and explosives. This relentless aggression has cemented the CJNG's reputation as one of the most feared criminal organizations in Mexico. The war on drugs in Mexico has intensified with the actions of the CJNG. Recently, Mexican authorities, with substantial support from international partners, notably the United States, conducted a significant crackdown on the CJNG. This coordinated effort led to the arrest and sentencing of 12 of the cartel's top hitmen. These individuals were not just ordinary members, but key operatives within the CJNG, playing crucial roles in executing the cartel's most violent and coercive actions. Their responsibilities included orchestrating and carrying out assassinations, kidnappings, and other acts of extreme violence to enforce the cartel's will and intimidate both rivals and law enforcement. Drug cartels in Mexico, like the CJNG, pose a serious threat to national security. In a dramatic and alarming response to the imprisonment of these high-ranking members, Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, CJNG, declared war on the Mexican government. This declaration is far from being a mere symbolic gesture. It is an explicit threat to escalate violence and destabilize regions across Mexico. The cartel's response underscores their readiness to resort to extreme measures to protect their interests, maintain their operational capabilities, and assert their dominance over territories and markets. The willingness of the CJNG to escalate violence indicates their strategic intent to intimidate the government and the public. By doing so, they aim to deter further law enforcement actions and pressure authorities into easing their crackdown efforts. This aggressive posture also serves to maintain internal cohesion and morale within the cartel by presenting a united front against perceived external threats. Moreover, The cartel's declaration of war reflects their capability to inflict significant harm. The CJNG is well armed, with access to a wide range of weapons, including high-powered firearms, explosives, and even military-grade equipment. Their operational sophistication allows them to conduct coordinated and sustained attacks, posing a serious challenge to Mexican law enforcement and military forces. The CJNG's declaration of war against the Mexican government carries several profound and far-reaching implications. First and foremost, this declaration signals a likely escalation of violence across the regions where the cartel operates. Historically, the CJNG has not hesitated to use extreme violence to achieve its objectives. The cartel's announcement indicates an intention to increase the frequency and intensity of their violent activities. This could manifest in coordinated attacks on law enforcement officers who are often targeted in ambushes and direct assaults. The risk extends to government officials, including those involved in the judicial process, political figures, and public administrators who might be perceived as adversaries by the cartel. Public institutions such as police stations, courthouses, and even schools and hospitals could become targets in the CJNG's strategy to destabilize the region and spread fear. The cartel's brutal history suggests that civilians could become collateral damage or worse, be deliberately targeted to create chaos and send a powerful message to the government and the public. This tactic of targeting civilians is aimed at undermining the state's authority and demonstrating the cartel's power and reach. The escalation in violence poses a direct and significant challenge to law enforcement. Authorities will need to enhance security measures drastically to protect both personnel and the general public. This will likely involve increasing the number of patrols, fortifying vulnerable locations, and possibly deploying military forces to support overwhelmed police units. Also, resources will need to be reallocated to regions most at risk of CJNG activities, which could strain other areas of law enforcement and public safety. Intelligence operations will also need to be intensified to anticipate and prevent potential attacks, requiring enhanced cooperation and information sharing between various government agencies and international partners. The CJNG is exceptionally well armed and organized, making it one of the most formidable opponents of traditional law enforcement agencies. Their arsenal includes a wide range of high-powered firearms, such as assault rifles, sniper rifles, and automatic weapons. In addition to firearms, the CJNG has access to explosives and military-grade equipment, including grenades, rocket-propelled grenades, RPGs, and armored vehicles. This sophisticated weaponry allows them to carry out large-scale attacks and withstand confrontations with heavily armed police and military units. The combination of advanced weaponry, logistical efficiency, and intelligence operations makes the threat of the CJNG's declared war particularly severe. They have the means to sustain prolonged and intense confrontations with the state, challenging the government's ability to maintain law and order. By declaring war on the Mexican government, the Cartel de Jalisco Nueva Generación, CJNG, aims to achieve several strategic objectives that are crucial to its survival and continued dominance. Intimidation is a primary goal of this declaration. The CJNG seeks to instill fear not only in the government, but also in the general public. This tactic is designed to create a sense of insecurity and helplessness among citizens, which can undermine the public's confidence in the government's ability to protect them. This strategy of intimidation serves multiple purposes. Firstly, it maintains the cartel's influence over the regions it controls by showing that they are capable of inflicting significant harm if provoked. This can deter further law enforcement actions and discourage cooperation with the authorities from local communities. The cartel's message is clear. Any attempt to disrupt their operations will be met with severe consequences. This not only preserves their operational capabilities, but also helps in the recruitment and retention of members by showcasing the cartel's strength and resolve. Internally, declaring war can rally the cartel's members, reinforcing loyalty and unity. By framing their struggle as a battle against an oppressive and hostile government, the CJNG can foster a sense of solidarity and purpose among its ranks. This narrative of resistance can boost morale and ensure that members remain committed to the cartel's cause, despite external pressures. This internal cohesion is crucial for maintaining the cartel's operational integrity, as it ensures that members are motivated and disciplined, reducing the risk of defections and internal conflicts. In response to the CJNG's declaration of war, the Mexican government is likely to bolster its security measures significantly. This could include deploying additional military and police forces to areas controlled or contested by the CJNG, as well as enhancing security for public officials and critical infrastructure. Given the transnational nature of drug cartels, international cooperation will be essential. The United States and other international partners can provide valuable intelligence, resources, and strategic support to help combat the CJNG more effectively. Additionally, the Mexican government will need to manage public communication carefully. Ensuring that citizens are informed about the measures being taken to counter the cartel's threats is essential for maintaining public confidence and cooperation. Transparent communication can help prevent the spread of misinformation and panic, which the cartel may exploit to further their intimidation tactics. Authorities will need to provide regular updates on safety measures, encourage community involvement in reporting suspicious activities, and highlight the successes in their efforts to dismantle the CJNG. The CJNG's declaration of war on Mexico marks a critical juncture in the country's ongoing struggle against powerful drug cartels. While the imprisonment of key cartel members represents a significant achievement for law enforcement, the subsequent retaliation highlights the complexities and dangers involved in dismantling such organizations. The situation necessitates a multifaceted response that combines strong security measures, international collaboration, and effective public communication to mitigate the threats posed by the CJNG.
I would like to tell the people of Culiacan that we have sent sufficient reinforcements to guarantee peace and tranquility.
Suficiente para garantizar la paz, la tranquilidad.
The Sinaloa Cartel is one of the most powerful and feared drug organizations in Mexico, responsible for much of the drug trafficking across the world. Recently, however, a civil war has broken out within the cartel, dividing it into two main factions. The Mayos, led by Ismael El Mayo Zambada, and the Chapitos, led by the sons of infamous cartel leader Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. This internal war has unleashed violence across the streets of Sinaloa, particularly in its capital, Culiacan, causing fear and chaos among its citizens. The Sinaloa Cartel was founded in the late 1980s and became one of the most dominant forces in the drug trade under the leadership of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman and Ismael El Mayo Zambada. For years, El Chapo and El Mayo controlled the cartel together, smuggling drugs like cocaine, marijuana, heroin, and methamphetamine into the United States and other parts of the world. El Chapo was notorious for his adventurous prison escapes, his violent actions, and his massive drug empire. However, after his final arrest and extradition to the United States in 2017, the leadership structure of the Sinaloa Cartel began to shift. El Chapo's sons, known collectively as Los Chapitos, or the Chapisa, stepped into leadership roles, while El Mayo continued to run his own faction. This division led to increasing tensions between the two groups, setting the stage for the conflict we are witnessing today. When did all these start? The civil war within the Sinaloa Cartel erupted in September 2024, when gunmen loyal to El Mayo stormed a neighborhood in Culiacan controlled by the Chapitos. This attack marked the beginning of what has now become one of the most violent periods in the city's recent history. Both sides are using heavily armed private militias that look and operate like military forces. These factions are not only fighting for control of drug routes and territory, but also for dominance within the cartel. The violence has reached unprecedented levels. Between 50 and 100 people have been killed in the clashes, with bodies regularly being found dumped in the streets. In one shocking instance of body messaging, 5 bodies were left propped against a wall with sombreros on their heads and chests. The sombreros are believed to be a symbol linked to the Mayos faction, although the exact meaning remains unclear. This tactic of body messaging is used by both factions to send threats and warnings to their enemies. How does Culiacan feel about this? As the conflict between the Mayos and Chapitos intensifies, the residents of Culiacan find themselves trapped in a state of terror. Gunfights between the two factions often take place at night, leaving citizens to wake up to scenes of violence and death in the morning. In some cases, the gunmen have even stopped buses and warned passengers to turn back, saying there is carnage ahead. For the people of Culiacan, this is the worst violence they have seen in 15 years. Most schools are shut down, businesses are closing early, and the once vibrant nightlife of the city has come to a complete halt. Musicians who used to perform in bars and restaurants are now forced to busk in the streets to earn enough money for food. "We're here to get money for food because it's really tough," says one musician. "Almost all of the gigs have been cancelled. Nothing, not even a morsel." The conflict has left thousands of people out of work, and many are relying on government food packages to survive. People queue for hours just to get basic supplies, unsure of when or if life will return to normal. What impact it has made on families and children. The violence is taking a particularly heavy toll on children and families. Many residents have had to take extreme measures to protect their loved ones. A mother named Hilda, who lives with her 7-year-old son Santi, describes how the recent gun battles in their neighborhood have left them traumatized. "It was traumatic," she says. "The children were scared. My son was terrified when he heard the shootouts. He had to hide with his grandparents." Children like Santi are growing up in a world where gunfire, kidnappings, and cartel violence are daily occurrences. The psychological impact of living in constant fear is immeasurable, and many families are desperate for a way out. What are the actions taken by the military? In response to the escalating violence, the Mexican government has deployed over 3,000 soldiers to Culiacan. These troops are tasked with maintaining order, but their presence has done little to stem the tide of violence. When asked when the situation would return to normal, one military commander admitted, "It doesn't depend on us. It depends on the groups in conflict if they stop fighting and leave the population in peace." This statement highlights the grim reality of the situation. The Mexican government, despite its best efforts, has little control over the cartel violence that is tearing the city apart. The state is caught in a difficult position as it lacks the power to stop the conflict outright. For now, peace depends entirely on whether the warring factions decide to negotiate or continue their bloody struggle for dominance. What are the roots of this conflict? The power struggle between the Mayos and Chapitos is not just about territory or drug routes. It is also a generational conflict. The Chapitos represent a younger, more aggressive faction, eager to assert their control over the cartel's operations. El Mayo, on the other hand, is a veteran leader who has been involved in the drug trade for decades. His faction represents the old guard with deep ties to the cartel's original operations. This internal division has caused a split in the cartel, with each side amassing its own army of loyalists. The Mayos have long relied on their alliances with other powerful drug lords, while the Chapitos have expanded their influence through their father's legacy and their own violent tactics. The conflict is also fueled by the broader drug trade in Mexico. The Sinaloa cartel remains one of the most powerful organizations in the country, and control over its operations is a prize worth fighting for. The violence in Culiacan is just one part of a larger battle for control of Mexico's drug trade. What are the impacts of a wider conflict? The war between the Mayos and Chapitos threatens to engulf the entire Sinaloa cartel. While the fighting is currently concentrated in Culiacan, there are fears that it could spread to other parts of Mexico. The cartel has a presence in nearly every state, and if the conflict continues to escalate, it could have devastating consequences for the entire country. The Mexican government has a difficult task ahead. If the violence continues to spread, it could destabilize large parts of northern Mexico, leading to even more bloodshed and suffering. Some experts believe that the only way to resolve the conflict is through negotiation, but others argue that the government must take stronger action to dismantle the cartels once and for all. The civil war within the Sinaloa cartel has turned Culiacan into a war zone, with the Mayos and Chapitos fighting for control of the cartel's operations. The violence has left a trail of death and destruction, and the people of Culiacan are living in fear. Schools are closed, businesses are shuttered, and families are struggling to survive in a city paralyzed by cartel violence. As long as the war continues, the people of Culiacan will remain caught in the crossfire. The future of the Sinaloa cartel and Mexico's drug trade as a whole depends on the outcome of this brutal conflict. For now, the residents of northern Mexico can only hope for peace, even as the violence rages on.
You may have heard of Joaquin Guzman, better known as El Chapo, or the Godfather. He was the world's biggest drug lord. He is currently serving a life sentence in a US prison, but his business, Mexico's Sinaloa cartel, is still booming.
The Sinaloa cartel, once a formidable force in the world of drug trafficking, is now embroiled in a fierce power struggle. With the recent capture of El Mayo Zambada, the last remaining co-founder, the cartel is facing a leadership crisis. While the Chapitos, El Chapo's sons, have been positioning themselves as the natural successors, a new player has emerged, threatening to upend their plans. This video explores the identity of this enigmatic figure and the potential consequences of their rise to power. So stay tuned with us. In July 2024, a seismic shift occurred in the world of drug cartels. Ismael El Mayo Zambada, the elusive co-founder of the Sinaloa cartel, was arrested in Texas. After evading capture for decades and outlasting his infamous partner El Chapo, Zambada's arrest could be seen as the end of an era. However, this development is far from a straightforward resolution. The arrest of El Mayo has left a significant power vacuum, sparking fears of escalating violence, particularly in Sinaloa. The Chapitos, El Chapo's sons, are positioned to seize full control of the cartel. Known for their ruthless methods, Los Chapitos have built a reputation for violent retribution and flashy displays of power. With their father imprisoned, they seem ready to assert their dominance over the entire organization. Yet a new and enigmatic figure has emerged: Ismael Zambada Garcia, also known as El Mayo Flaco. Unlike the Chapitos, who crave the spotlight, El Mayo Flaco has operated quietly, mastering the cartel's intricate operations from the shadows. While the Chapitos are seen as reckless heirs, El Mayo Flaco is viewed as a strategic and patient leader with a deep understanding of the cartel's inner workings. El Mayo Flaco's rise could disrupt the Chapitos' plans. There is speculation that he might reunite the fractured cartel and continue its operations under his leadership. This shift in power could have profound implications, extending beyond Mexico to impact global drug trafficking, international politics, and the ongoing opioid crisis. The opioid crisis in the US has reached alarming levels, with more deaths from accidental opioid overdoses than from car accidents. The Sinaloa cartel plays a major role in this crisis, largely due to its involvement in the fentanyl trade. El Mayo Flaco has emerged as a key figure in this operation, aiming to increase fentanyl's addictiveness and ensure a continuous stream of customers, thus driving up the number of fatalities. El Mayo Flaco isn't just another drug lord. He operates within a multi-billion-dollar industry that shapes global drug trade dynamics. Despite his influence, he has maintained a low profile, largely unknown outside cartel circles. With his father in prison, Flaco faces a critical choice: take over the Sinaloa cartel or let Los Chapitos lead. His decision will have significant repercussions both within and beyond Mexico. If El Mayo Flaco challenges Los Chapitos, we could witness a dramatic shift in organized crime operations. His leadership style contrasts sharply with theirs. While the Chapitos rely on brute force, El Mayo Flaco employs a more strategic approach. He is known for building alliances rather than creating enemies, positioning himself as a calculated leader. Under Flaco's leadership, the cartel's operations have diversified. Beyond traditional drug routes, he has expanded into cybercrime, human trafficking, and legitimate businesses used for money laundering. This diversification not only enhances the cartel's profitability, but also its resilience. Flaco's control over the fentanyl trade is particularly significant. As fentanyl, a synthetic opioid 50 times stronger than heroin, remains cheap to produce and extremely deadly, the cartel has become one of the largest suppliers in the U.S., contributing to the crisis that claims thousands of lives annually. Flaco's methods also reflect a shift from traditional practices. While Los Chapitos flaunt their power, Flaco embraces modern technology to maintain a competitive edge. His use of encrypted communications keeps his activities concealed, while blockchain technology facilitates secure money transfers. His application of AI to predict law enforcement strategies demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of contemporary tools, making him a formidable opponent. Moreover, Flaco's approach to managing corruption is advanced. Rather than simply bribing officials, he invests in long-term relationships. He supports the careers of politicians, judges, and law enforcement officers, helping them rise to more influential positions. This strategy ensures these individuals become even more valuable assets as they climb the power ladder. Rumors suggest that Flaco's influence extends to high levels of government, both within Mexico and internationally, which might explain his ability to operate with relative impunity. As Flaco contends with Los Chapitos, the implications for the Sinaloa cartel and the global drug trade are profound. If Flaco outmaneuvers the Chapitos and gains control, the cartel could become even more powerful and elusive. This prospect is troubling given the human cost associated with the drug trade. The struggle for dominance within the cartel is more than a clash of individuals. It represents a potential narco-civil war with far-reaching consequences. The future of drug trafficking hinges on who leads the Sinaloa cartel. If Los Chapitos retain control, we can expect a continuation of the current dynamics, with drugs flowing steadily into the U.S. However, if El Mayo Flaco takes over, a broader expansion into European and Asian markets might occur. The difference won't just be in the types of drugs, but also in their distribution. Flaco's tech-driven methods, including drone deliveries and cryptocurrency transactions, could revolutionize the industry. Beyond the drug trade, both factions wield significant political influence, though their tactics differ. Los Chapitos use direct methods, bribes, threats, and occasional assassinations to exert control. In contrast, El Mayo Flaco employs more subtle strategies, investing in political campaigns, setting up legitimate businesses as fronts, and infiltrating government at multiple levels. This could usher in a new era of narco-politics, where a cartel leader doesn't just influence policy, but actively shapes it. Imagine one of the world's most wanted criminals influencing drug laws, border policies, and international agreements. A chilling prospect indeed. The broader impact of this power struggle could redefine organized crime globally. The Sinaloa cartel sets trends for other criminal organizations. If Flaco's corporate and tech-savvy methods succeed, other groups may follow suit. Conversely, if Los Chapitos maintain their grip, it could signal a return to the more violent and ostentatious practices of the past. Law enforcement agencies face significant challenges in adapting to either Flaco's high-tech methods or the Chapitos' brute force. The battle against cartels is evolving, with increasing violence and civilian casualties likely as the struggle continues. Addressing the root causes of drug demand, poverty, and corruption remains crucial, though no easy solutions exist. The capture of El Mayo and the rise of El Mayo Flaco signal a new chapter in the war on drugs, with the true human cost being families shattered by addiction, communities living in fear, and lives lost to violence. So, as you follow updates on cartel activities, remember this. It's a complex issue of power, money, and human suffering. And as long as these dynamics persist, new leaders like El Mayo Flaco will always emerge to take charge. What should be done about it? That's the question we all need to consider. Thanks for watching. Who do you think will emerge as Sinaloa's new leader? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Until next time, stay safe.
Tonight, two of the world's most powerful drug lords are in U.S. custody, including the son of former kingpin Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, both charged with flooding the United States with drugs like fentanyl and cocaine. CBS's Manuel Bojorquez reports that federal agents used trickery and deception to make the arrest.
Mexico is often associated with drugs, cartels, and international crimes. Behind many of these acts, there's usually a person pulling the strings from the shadows. El Mayo is one of them. Just last month, news broke that El Mayo, the co-founder of the Sinaloa drug cartel, was reportedly kidnapped in Mexico and handed over to the United States against his will. This dramatic turn of events has captured global attention. But who is this powerful drug lord, and what could happen to him in the future? Let's find out in this video. Ismael Mario Zambada Garcia, better known as El Mayo, was born on January 1st, 1948, and is a former Mexican drug lord. He is one of the co-founders and top leaders of the Sinaloa Cartel, an international crime organization based in Sinaloa, Mexico. Before taking over as the cartel's leader, Zambada was responsible for coordinating the logistics of the Guzman Zambada organization, which managed the trafficking of cocaine and heroin into U.S. cities like Chicago. They used various methods for smuggling, including aircraft, submarines, container ships, fast boats, buses, and cars. Zambada has also maintained strong connections with the Juarez cartel and the Carrillo Fuentes family, as well as with Colombian cocaine suppliers. After the arrest of Mexican drug lord Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo in 1989, the organization split into two rival factions, the Tijuana cartel, led by the Arellano Felix brothers, and the Sinaloa cartel, which Zambada led alongside Hector Luis Palma Salazar and Joaquin Guzman Loera, also known as El Chapo. The Sinaloa cartel operated in several Mexican states, including Sinaloa, Durango, and Sonora. Since 1998, Zambada has been wanted by the Mexican government, which placed bounties totaling $2.8 million on him and other cartel leaders. In 2006, President Felipe Calderón's administration launched a major offensive against Mexico's drug trafficking networks, particularly targeting the Tijuana cartel. This allowed Zambada and Guzman to expand their influence in northwestern Mexico, leading to violent conflicts. The Sinaloa cartel, under Zambada's leadership, continued to receive large quantities of cocaine from Colombian sources, using various methods to smuggle the drugs into the United States. The cartel's influence extended across Mexico's Pacific coast and into other regions like Cancun and Nuevo León. In the 2000s, Zambada became one of the most wanted men in Mexico, with the FBI offering up to $5 million for information leading to his capture. It was believed that Zambada may have undergone plastic surgery to avoid detection. After El Chapo's capture in 2016, Zambada assumed full control of the Sinaloa cartel and is now considered one of Mexico's most powerful and enduring drug lords. In 2019, Zambada's son, Vicente Zambada Niebla, testified against El Chapo, revealing that his father regularly bribed high-level Mexican officials, sometimes spending as much as $1 million per month on these bribes. Ismael Zambada, also known as El Mayo, is married to Rosario Niebla Cardosa. They have 4 sons and 4 daughters. His family has been deeply involved in the drug trade. His wife and sons, Serafin Zambada Ortiz, known as El Serra, who was arrested and released in 2018, and Ismael Zambada Imperial, nicknamed El Mayito Gordo, who was convicted, as well as his daughters, Maria Teresa, Miriam Patricia, Monica del Rosario, and Modesta, have all played roles in drug trafficking and money laundering. On March 18, 2009, Zambada's son Vicente Zambada Niebla was arrested by the Mexican army. Another son, Ismael Mayito Zambada Jr., is wanted in the United States for conspiracy to distribute drugs. On October 20, 2010, some of Zambada's relatives, including his brother Jesus the King Zambada and another son and nephew, were arrested in Mexico City on drug trafficking charges. Tragedy struck on June 18, 2014, when Zambada's son-in-law, Juan Gabriel Gonzalez Ibarra, who was married to his daughter Miriam Patricia, died from an electric shock at his home in Culiacan. In June 2020, former DEA agent Mike Vigil revealed that Zambada was suffering from diabetes. As mentioned earlier, 2 leaders of the Sinaloa cartel were arrested in the United States last month. One of them, Joaquin Guzman Lopez, the son of the infamous cartel boss Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, played a key role in organizing the arrest. Guzman Lopez tricked Ismael El Mayo Zambada, a top leader of the cartel, into boarding a flight. Zambada believed the flight was to inspect a piece of land in Mexico. However, the plane actually landed in El Paso, Texas, where federal agents, including those from Homeland Security investigations, arrested both men. Zambada had no idea that U.S. investigators had used a split within the cartel to set him up, and that Guzman Lopez was cooperating with them. FBI agents captured the 2 men in one of the biggest successes for U.S. law enforcement against the cartels. The operation went smoothly despite the seriousness of the arrests and the potential impact on Mexican drug trafficking. Zambada pleaded not guilty to all charges during his first court appearance in El Paso and is being held without bail on 7 federal criminal charges, including running a criminal enterprise and money laundering. Zambada also agreed to give up his right to appear in person at a hearing scheduled for July 31st and did not request bail. FBI Director Christopher Wray stated that both Zambada and Guzman Lopez had evaded law enforcement for years, but would now face justice in the United States. U.S. authorities had been after Zambada for years, raising the reward for his capture to $15 million in 2021. He was indicted by a grand jury in northern Illinois in 2009 and faces multiple criminal charges. In April 2012, El Mayo Zambada was indicted by a U.S. federal grand jury in Texas, along with other top leaders of the Sinaloa cartel, including Joaquin Guzman. They were charged with crimes like murder, conspiracy related to drug trafficking, money laundering, and organized crime. By this time, both Guzman and Zambada had already faced multiple charges in various U.S. courts for drug trafficking and organized crime. The 2012 indictment in western Texas highlighted two violent acts linked to the cartel. One occurred during a wedding in Ciudad Juarez in 2010. An American citizen and two family members were kidnapped due to their connections with the rival Juarez cartel. The groom, who lived in Columbus, New Mexico, was found brutally murdered. His hands had been cut off and placed on his chest. 3 days after the wedding, the bodies of the groom, his brother, and his uncle were discovered in the back of a pickup truck. Another incident mentioned in the indictment involved the kidnapping, murder, and mutilation of a Texas resident in 2009. This was done in retaliation for losing a 670-pound load of marijuana that had been seized by the Border Patrol. Last week, Zambada appeared in a Texas court in a wheelchair. He pleaded not guilty to charges of drug trafficking, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. El Chapo's son, Guzman Lopez, also pleaded not guilty to drug trafficking and other charges in a U.S. court in late July. The capture of Ismael El Mayo Zambada is a major event in the fight against drug crime. For many years, he was a secretive leader of one of the world's biggest criminal gangs. His arrest, along with Joaquin Guzman Lopez, shows that the law is committed to catching top criminals. But this doesn't mean the Sinaloa cartel is finished. The cartel has bounced back from setbacks before, so it's unclear how they'll handle this change. What do you think about El Mayo's capture? Let us know in the comments. Subscribe to our channel for more updates and news on this story. Imagine a man who has avoided being caught for many years, a drug lord who created an empire built on violence and corruption. Now, picture the moment when that empire falls and the man is finally captured. Today, we will look at the story of El Chapo's arrest, focusing on the U.S. agents, the Mexican government, and the intelligence that helped capture him. Join us as we explore how one of the world's most wanted criminals was finally brought to justice. Ismael Mario Zambada Garcia, also known as El Mayo, was a Mexican drug lord and one of the main leaders of the Sinaloa cartel, a large crime group based in Sinaloa, Mexico. Before becoming the top leader, he reportedly worked as the logistical coordinator for the cartel, helping with the trafficking of drugs like cocaine and heroin into cities like Chicago, using various methods such as planes, boats, trucks, and more. El Mayo had never been arrested or jailed until July 2024, when he was captured in El Paso, Texas, and placed in U.S. custody. Zambada is married to Rosario Niebla Cardosa, and they have 4 sons and 4 daughters. His family has been involved in drug distribution and money laundering. His sons include Serafin Zambada Ortiz, who was arrested and later released, and Ismael Zambada Imperial, also known as Mayito Gordo, who was convicted. Another son, Vicente Zambada Niebla, was arrested by the Mexican army in 2009. His son, Ismael Mayito Zambada Jr., is wanted in the U.S. for drug-related crimes. In 2010, some of Zambada's family members were arrested on drug trafficking charges, including his brother Jesus, the King Zambada. In 2014, his son-in-law, Juan Gabriel Gonzalez Ibarra, died from an electric shock at home. In 2020, it was revealed that Zambada was suffering from diabetes. Ismael Zambada has worked closely with the Juarez cartel and the Carrillo Fuentes family, while maintaining his connections to Colombian cocaine suppliers. After the arrest of Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo in 1989, the drug empire split, leading to the rise of the Sinaloa cartel, co-led by Zambada, Hector Luis Palma Salazar, and Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. Zambada's Sinaloa cartel controlled large areas of Mexico, including Sinaloa, Durango, and Sonora, and trafficked drugs into the U.S. using various methods like airplanes and tunnels. Since 1998, Zambada has been wanted by Mexican authorities, with a bounty placed on his head. As other cartels, like the Tijuana cartel, faced increased pressure, Zambada and El Chapo expanded their operations, resulting in violent conflict. His cartel received large quantities of cocaine from Colombia, transporting it to U.S. distribution centers. Zambada became the sole leader of the Sinaloa cartel after El Chapo's 2016 capture, making him Mexico's most powerful drug lord. In 2019, his son Vicente testified against El Chapo, revealing that Zambada paid bribes of up to $1 million per month to high-ranking Mexican officials. Despite being hunted, Zambada remains at large and is one of the most elusive figures in the drug world. Ismael El Mayo Zambada, a notorious Mexican drug lord, managed to evade capture for more than 35 years. However, in 2024, his luck ran out when U.S. authorities arrested him in El Paso, Texas. The arrest was part of an elaborate sting operation orchestrated by Joaquin Guzman Lopez, the son of El Chapo, Zambada's former partner in the Sinaloa cartel. Guzman Lopez led Zambada to believe they were traveling to northern Mexico to explore potential locations for illegal airstrips, but instead they lured him into U.S. territory, where he was apprehended. In 2010, during a rare interview with Mexican journalist Julio Scherer Garcia, Zambada admitted his fear of being captured and imprisoned. He said the thought of being jailed terrified him, and though he speculated about taking his own life if it ever came to that, he wasn't sure if he had the courage. Despite years of caution, Zambada, at 76 years old and in poor health, was tricked into crossing the border. For someone who had successfully evaded capture for decades, his downfall seemed extraordinary, but it's possible that his old age and health problems made him more vulnerable to deception. The arrest raises several questions, including who will take control of the powerful Sinaloa cartel. Following El Chapo's capture in 2016, there was a violent power struggle within the cartel, leading to bloody confrontations between rival factions and other drug gangs. After the arrest of El Chapo's son, Ovidio Guzman Lopez, in 2019, the cartel soldiers unleashed chaos in Culiacan, attacking civilians, police, and military forces with high-caliber weapons until the authorities released Ovidio to stop the violence. Ovidio was eventually rearrested and extradited to the United States, but the Sinaloa cartel remained strong despite internal conflicts. Mike Vigil, a former DEA agent, believes that a similar violent outbreak, like the Culiacanazo of 2019, might be avoided this time around. He notes that the Sinaloa cartel has several potential leaders, including El Chapo's brother, who could take over smoothly without triggering another round of bloodshed. Vigil also points out that focusing on bringing down individual cartel leaders, known as the kingpin strategy, has rarely led to long-term success. In the past, such strategies often created internal strife within cartels, resulting in even more violence, benefiting their rivals, such as the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG. As the Mexican government prepares for possible unrest following Zambada's arrest, additional security forces have been deployed to the state of Sinaloa to prevent an escalation of violence. The timing of Zambada's arrest seems linked to the U.S. government's increasing focus on fighting the fentanyl crisis, which has become the leading cause of death for Americans between 18 and 45. The U.S. Attorney General, Merrick Garland, emphasized in a statement that the Justice Department would not rest until every cartel leader and associate responsible for the fentanyl epidemic is brought to justice. Both Zambada and Los Chapitos, El Chapo's sons, have made billions from trafficking fentanyl, which is cheaper and easier to produce than cocaine. While shutting down fentanyl smuggling entirely is nearly impossible due to its profitability, the U.S. is determined to weaken the cartels by dismantling their leadership. Despite Zambada's age and poor health, his capture is seen as a critical part of this broader strategy to hold cartel leaders accountable for the devastation caused by fentanyl. Even though it's unclear what the immediate future holds for the Sinaloa cartel, Zambada's arrest marks a turning point in the ongoing war on drugs. The arrest of El Mayo Zambada is a significant milestone in the ongoing war against drug cartels in Mexico and the United States. It represents a major blow to the Sinaloa cartel, one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the world. However, it is important to remember that the capture of a single individual does not eliminate the threat posed by drug cartels. These organizations are resilient and adaptable, and they will likely continue to operate even after the loss of key leaders. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment below. Let us know your thoughts on the arrest of El Mayo Zambada and the ongoing war against drug cartels. Thank you for watching. In some parts of Mexico, if you see violence, murder, or drug trafficking, a few cartels may be responsible. One of the main suspects is the Sinaloa cartel, considered the largest and most powerful drug trafficking organization in the Western Hemisphere. This network includes some of Mexico's most notorious drug lords. Beyond the violence and human suffering associated with this criminal enterprise lies a staggering reality. The Sinaloa cartel is estimated to be worth over $500 billion. How did a group of criminals amass such an unimaginable fortune? We are going to uncover the truth behind the Sinaloa cartel. Without further ado, let's start the video. History. The state of Sinaloa in Mexico has a long history of growing and smuggling marijuana and poppy. Many of Mexico's drug trafficking organizations started here as small groups of peasant families. In the 1960s and 1970s, these families moved from smuggling to dealing drugs, especially marijuana. Pedro Aviles was one of the first to traffic large amounts of marijuana and invited Joaquin El Chapo Guzman into the business. Aviles was killed in 1978 during a police shootout. In the late 1970s, the families expanded their activities. They began transporting cocaine for Colombian and Central American traffickers and moved their operations to Guadalajara in Jalisco. Leaders like Rafael Caro Quintero, Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, and Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo were key figures. With help from Honduran Juan Ramon Mata Ballesteros, they worked with Colombia's Medellin cartel. Mata Ballesteros was the main link between Colombian and Mexican traffickers, establishing drug routes still used today. Moving cocaine by air and sea to Central America and Mexico, then overland to the U.S. In 1985, Mexican traffickers killed Enrique Camarena, a U.S. DEA agent. This led to the downfall of the Guadalajara cartel, as U.S. pressure forced Mexican authorities to act. The cartel's leaders fled, and remaining factions set up in different parts of Mexico. The Arellano Felix brothers went to Tijuana, Carrillo Fuentes' family to Ciudad Juarez, and El Chapo and his partner, Hector Luis Palma Salazar, stayed in Sinaloa. The Sinaloa cartel then formed an alliance with the Valencia family in Michoacán, creating the Milenio cartel. This gave them access to key Pacific ports and chemicals from China for meth production. Violence between these groups started quickly. In 1992, Guzman sent gunmen to a Tijuana cartel party, killing 9 people. The Tijuana cartel tried to kill Guzman in 1993, but killed a Mexican cardinal instead. Guzman fled to Guatemala and was arrested, Palma Salazar was arrested in 1995. While in prison, El Chapo still controlled the Sinaloa cartel through messages sent by his lawyers. He escaped in 2001 and regained full control. In 2008, a feud with the Beltran Leyva brothers led to violence across Sinaloa, Chihuahua, and Durango. El Chapo, Ismael El Mayo, Zambada, and Juan José El Azul, Esparragosa Moreno, became the cartel's main leaders. In 2010, Mexican authorities killed Ignacio Nacho Coronel, breaking the link with the Milenio cartel. This caused a split, leading to the creation of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG, a major rival today. El Chapo was arrested again in 2014, but escaped in 2015 through a tunnel. He was recaptured in 2017 and extradited to the U.S. This sparked an internal power struggle within the Sinaloa cartel. Clashes occurred between El Mayo's followers and El Chapo's sons, with some instigated by Damaso, El Licenciado Lopez Núñez, El Chapo's former right-hand man. El Licenciado and his son, Minilik, were later arrested and are in U.S. custody. Leadership of the Sinaloa cartel. The Sinaloa cartel doesn't have a traditional top-down leadership structure. Instead, it operates as a network of different groups that work together. Both inside and outside Mexico, the cartel often collaborates with local partners to carry out its activities. Currently, the cartel has two main leadership groups. One is led by El Mayo, the last remaining leader from the older generation. The other group is led by El Chapo's sons, Joaquin Guzman Lopez, Ovidio Guzman Lopez, Ivan Archivaldo, and Jesus Alfredo, who are known as the Chapitos. Each group within the cartel has its own armed forces or mini-armies to help them protect and control territories. The Chapitos are associated with groups like the Ninis, the Salazar, Gente Nueva, and the Chimales. El Mayo's network works with groups like the Antrax and the Russos. The four Chapitos are top targets for both Mexican and U.S. authorities. Ovidio Guzman was arrested by Mexican authorities in January 2023 after a failed attempt in 2019. He was extradited to the United States in September 2023. Recently, Joaquin Guzman Lopez, one of the Chapitos and the son of Sinaloa cartel co-founder Joaquin El Chapo Guzman Loera, was detained along with Ismael El Mayo Zambada Garcia, the other co-founder of the cartel, after landing in a small plane in El Paso, Texas. Joaquin Guzman Lopez pleaded not guilty to U.S. drug charges last week, 5 days after his dramatic arrest in an operation where he delivered his father's former partner to U.S. authorities. Wearing an orange jumpsuit but no handcuffs, he entered the plea in a Chicago federal court. U.S. District Judge Sharon Johnson Coleman ordered him detained until his trial. If convicted, Guzman Lopez could face the death penalty. How they earn a lot of money. The Sinaloa cartel makes a lot of money by trafficking large amounts of drugs like fentanyl, heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, and marijuana. According to the DEA, the cartel has distribution hubs in several U.S. cities and controls smuggling routes in Arizona and California. They also reportedly run fentanyl labs in Mexico. The cartel is one of two groups that use their control of the fentanyl trade to develop advanced money laundering methods, including the use of cryptocurrency. For example, they laundered over $869,000 using cryptocurrency between August 2022 and February 2023, according to a U.S. indictment. Most of the fentanyl that enters the U.S. comes from ingredients made in China. These ingredients are pressed into pills or packed as powder and then smuggled in from Mexico by drug cartels. Even though Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, a former leader of the Sinaloa cartel, was found guilty of many crimes and sentenced to life in prison in 2019, his drug empire made him a billionaire. He was once ranked the 10th richest man in Mexico and the 140th in the world in 2011, with a net worth of about $1 billion. To help with drug trafficking, the Sinaloa cartel also built a large shipping and transport network. Guzman was called the biggest drug lord of all time by some, and the US DEA considered him the godfather of the drug world, believing he surpassed even Pablo Escobar in influence and reach. Currently, the CJNG is the Sinaloa cartel's main rival. However, the two organizations have come to work together at certain stages of drug supply chains. For example, by sharing suppliers of precursor chemicals for the production of methamphetamine and fentanyl. The Sinaloa cartel is a strong example of how powerful organized crime can be. Their huge wealth comes from many illegal activities, showing the urgent need for countries to work together to fight drug trafficking. Even though capturing key leaders has hurt the cartel, it still remains powerful, highlighting the challenges ahead. What do you think about the Sinaloa cartel's operations? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Mexican drug cartels are not just ordinary street criminals. They are powerful, technologically advanced criminal organizations with hundreds of thousands of members. These groups control vast regions of Mexico, spreading violence and crime across Mexico, Central America, and beyond. Over the past few years, changes in border policies have allowed these cartels to gain access to American communities, bringing harm to innocent citizens. One of the most dangerous threats they pose is the smuggling of illicit fentanyl, a deadly drug that has become the leading cause of death among young Americans aged 18 to 45. This alarming fact highlights the significant power these cartels hold, making them a serious threat to both Mexico and the United States. Mexico is home to many organized crime gangs, with estimates suggesting that at least 150 such groups are operating in the country. These gangs often form alliances with the two major cartels, the Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco Nueva Generación cartel, CJNG. Other prominent cartels include Los Zetas, the Gulf cartel, and the Juarez cartel. Together, these groups have nearly 1 million members who are involved in drug trafficking, money laundering, violent crimes, and other illegal activities. The Sinaloa cartel is one of the oldest and most powerful drug trafficking organizations in Mexico. With an estimated 100,000 members, it has established strong connections with Mexican political and economic elites, allowing it to maintain a tight grip on its territory. The CJNG, a newer and even more dangerous cartel, has quickly risen to power. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA, considers the CJNG to be the top threat to the United States, and it is believed to control or influence about 85% of Mexican city-states. The Mexican drug cartels are not just about power, they are also highly sophisticated actors. They have a monopoly on violence in many regions, using tactics such as intimidation, bribery, extortion, and brutal acts of violence to maintain control. The cartels are known for leaving horrifying displays of violence, such as beheadings and mass graves, to terrorize local citizens. Estimates suggest that between 1/3 and 1/2 of all homicides in Mexico are linked to the cartels. The cartels are heavily armed, with access to advanced weapons such as AK-47s, M16s, and military-grade weapons like the Galil AC. Since 2006, Mexico's homicide rate has tripled, with an estimated 150,000 deaths resulting from crime-related violence. In 2018 alone, the cartels were responsible for the deaths of at least 130 candidates and politicians during Mexico's presidential elections. Local police are often bribed or pressured into protecting the cartel's drug shipments, controlling the economy, and helping them maintain their hold on territory. One of the cartel's most sophisticated tactics involves the use of drones. Both the Sinaloa and CJNG cartels have embraced modern technology, using drones to optimize their smuggling efforts and improve their surveillance and reconnaissance. These drones are used to monitor U.S. Border Patrol agents, allowing drug mules to move illegal aliens and narcotics across the southern border undetected. In some cases, the cartels have even hacked U.S. Department of Homeland Security, DHS drones to facilitate their smuggling operations. The cartels have also equipped their drones with drugs, using a drag-and-drop technique to transport them across the border. This method allows them to evade U.S. law enforcement by relying on technology rather than people. In February 2023, Border Patrol Chief Agent Gloria Chavez testified before Congress that the cartels have 17 times the number of drones, twice the amount of flight hours, and unlimited funding to grow their operations. In Texas's Rio Grande Valley sector alone, Customs and Border Protection, CBP, faced over 10,000 drone incursions and 25,000 drone sightings in 1 year. In addition to smuggling drugs, the cartels have used drones to carry out attacks against rival groups and law enforcement. The CJNG in particular has been linked to drone attacks against police and civilians in Mexico. In January 2022, the CJNG used drones to bomb a camp in Michoacán, Mexico, as part of a larger effort to take control of the region. The violence caused by these drone attacks led to a mass evacuation of residents from nearby towns. The Mexican drug cartels have also weaponized social media to expand their influence and recruit new members. They use platforms like TikTok, Snapchat, WhatsApp, and Facebook to recruit American citizens for drug smuggling, human smuggling, and other illegal activities. The DEA has acknowledged that social media is a major tool for cartels to run their operations and reach out to victims. When their product kills Americans, the cartels simply move on to victimize others. Cartel members often post job offers on social media, promising large sums of money for smuggling drugs or people across the southern border. For example, in October 2022, a TikTok video offered $70,000 for someone to drive an 18-wheeler from McAllen to Houston. The Texas Department of Public Safety confirmed that the post was from a cartel member, following a pattern of online recruitment. A Tucson sector Border Patrol agent stated that nearly 90% of drivers arrested for smuggling admitted they were recruited through social media. The cartels also target young people, juveniles, and even U.S. soldiers for recruitment. Sometimes they blackmail individuals into participating in illegal activities, leaving them with no way out. U.S. servicemen have been attracted to these promises of money, drugs, and power within the cartels, leading to some deserting the military to join the cartels. These trained military men make the cartels even more dangerous as they bring professional skills and knowledge to their criminal operations. One of the most significant threats posed by the Mexican drug cartels is the smuggling of illicit fentanyl. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid that is much more potent than most other illicit drugs, making it cheap and easy to produce. The cartels obtain fentanyl precursors from China through maritime ports in western Mexico, over which they fight for control. The cartels then convert these substances into fentanyl, often lacing it into fake prescription drugs or other illegal substances. The U.S. Department of Justice, DOJ, has recently charged a faction of the Sinaloa cartel for its role in a sophisticated pipeline of fentanyl precursor chemicals from China. This faction has also been involved in smuggling military-grade weapons from the U.S. in exchange for fentanyl. The profits from fentanyl smuggling are huge, with reports indicating that a single kilogram of fentanyl can be transformed into hundreds of thousands of counterfeit pills, each sold for a significant profit. fentanyl has already claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands of Americans, most of whom unknowingly took something laced with the drug. A Wall Street Journal investigation revealed that Sinaloa cartel cooks can make enough fentanyl for hundreds of thousands of doses every 6 days. These cooks reportedly earn more money in a week than the average Mexican makes in a year. A single package of fentanyl, weighing just 11 pounds, can sell for $15,000 in Culiacan, Mexico, but its value skyrockets to $100,000 by the time it reaches the United States. The Mexican drug cartels are highly organized, powerful, and deadly. Their smuggling tactics, use of advanced technology, and exploitation of social media have made them a significant threat to both Mexico and the United States. The cartel's involvement in fentanyl smuggling in particular has had devastating consequences, claiming the lives of countless Americans. As the war on drugs continues, it is clear that addressing the power and influence of these cartels is a critical challenge that must be met with determination and resolve. The safety and well-being of communities on both sides of the border depend on it.